It is probably the greatest story ever told. It's found in the Bible. It's in Luke chapter 15, and it's called the story of the prodigal son. It's the story of a young Jewish boy who, at a certain age, decided he wanted no more of life with his father. He demanded his inheritance, which in that culture was equal to saying to his father, "I wish you were dead." Now, the father should have excommunicated him right away, but he didn't do it. In fact, he gave him a third of his property. The son cashed the property out, went to a foreign country, and wasted all of it in wild living. When he ran out of money, he ran out of friends, he ran out of luck. He found himself at the bottom of the bottom for a Jewish boy feeding pigs, hungry, filthy, dirty, lonely, and empty. But the good news is, he returned to God. Some of you listening to me today, somebody's maybe shared this on your page, but you have ran away from God. And how's it going for you? Are you satisfied? Are you fulfilled? Today we want to look at this prodigal and see 4 steps necessary to return to God. And I want you to know you can come back to God. The first step is he recognized that life is better with the Father. In verse 17 he says, he came to himself, he said, "How many of my father's hired servants have bread enough to spare, and yet I perish with hunger?" You realize life is always better with the Father. The things we really want in life, love and joy and peace and truth and freedom and dignity, they're only found with God. You're not going to find those things really anywhere else. The second thing he did is found in verse 18. He said, "I will arise and go to my father and say to him, 'Father, I've sinned against heaven and before you.'" He repented, and he turned back to the Father, and he admitted his sin. You want to come back to God? You've got to humble yourself and admit, "I have sinned." The third thing he did is in verse 19. It says, "And say to him, I am no longer worthy to be called your son. Make me like one of your hired servants." Realize that there's nothing better than being the Father's child. And that's something we don't deserve. It's a gift. It's a privilege that is given and not earned. He realized when he was away from the Father all that he was missing when he was at home with the Father. The privilege of being his Father's son. Well, he realized that he didn't deserve that, but maybe he could be an apprentice and become one of his father's hired men. Then he would at least have food to eat, and maybe he could make enough money to begin to pay his father back. The fourth step in returning to God is responding by returning to the Father. Not just go through this process, but it says, "And he arose and came to his father." There's a point where you've got to act. You got to get back to church. You got to get on your knees. You got to cry out to God. You got to come back to God. Some of you have wandered from God. Maybe you're still in church, but your heart has wandered from God. Today is your wake-up call. Come to your senses. God's arms are open wide to receive you. Today is the day to come back to the Father.